Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm thrilled to have with me today Fredrik Haren. He is known as the Creativity Explorer, goes around the world finding out interesting facts about creativity from interesting people, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with him today. Hopefully he finds me interesting too. Fredrik, it's wonderful having you here.
Well, I'm happy to be there. My company is actually called Interesting, so I approach everything from the perspective of interesting. Do you know the definition of interesting?
No, what is the definition?
Something unusual or exciting in a way that keeps my attention.
Okay, and
so that's what we should strive for: unusual and exciting in a way that keeps your attention.
And how did that sort of concept bring you to the world of creativity?
Why did I? You know what? Actually, the company name it's older than the creativity part of it. I bought interesting.org in like 1998 or something like that. I thought it was a beautiful domain, and then I thought that's a good name for a company. So the company was founded way before I went into creativity. So that's that connection. I just thought it would be a good name for a company.
And then, what was the journey that brought you into the world of creativity?
Yes, so I wrote my first two books on the internet, or about the internet. So I wrote a book about internet and marketing in 1995, and another book on internet and customer service in 1998. So the first I ran an internet company from 95 to 99, and then I sold that company in end of 99. And then I said, okay, now I sold my company. What do I do? And I realized that I really hadn't been. The internet I wasn't so interested in the technology. I was more interested in the idea that internet was new at the time. So this idea of something new and how this new thing could change so much of business. So I said, I studied the concept of doing things in a new way. I didn't study the internet. So then I said, okay, I'll study all kinds of new. It doesn't have to be internet anymore. So since 2000, I've just been studying creativity.
And what do you mean by studying creativity? I mean, I know I talk about it a lot on this podcast, but some people might be joining us for the first time. How can you study a subject that is all about expression and sort of individual creativity?
Oh, yeah. I guess, well, you can study music, and it's all about expression, right? You can study anything. You can observe things. So I like to say to people, I don't look at myself necessarily as being very creative, but I'm very interested in creativity. So I like to learn about creativity from many people and many different kinds of people. And so I've been doing that now for 20 years, but for the last couple of years, I've been more focused on studying creativity where we normally don't go. So we usually study it with entrepreneurs or artists, but you can learn about creativity from almost anyone who does something creative. So I ventured out more recently to look at the roads less traveled when it comes to creativity, I guess.
And I think that's something that our listeners would really be thrilled to hear about. It's this concept of being an explorer, I guess. Can you give us some stories about interesting people that you've learned from when it comes to their creativity?
Yeah, sure. I'll share the first story I'll share will be about the concept of the creativity explorer. By the way, so explorer, I'm very much into definitions of words. An explorer is someone who ventures into unknown territory in order to learn more about it. And I think that's a very good approach. So the story goes that my son, who's 8 years old, about 8 months ago, he was supposed to do a presentation in school, and the subject was, what does your parents do for a living? And he was supposed to say, my father is a creativity expert. but he got it wrong. So he said, my father's a creativity explorer. So it came out of a mistake, which a lot of creativity does. And I said, you know, that is a much better approach. To explore a topic is much more interesting than to be an expert on it, because expert for a lot of people implies that you now know it all, but explorer means you know nothing. And then you're much more interested to learn new things. So, and it totally changed my approach to creativity. I look at myself much less as an expert and much more as someone who knows nothing and needs to find out more. So I'll happily share some examples with people I've interviewed recently. We can start in India. Yeah. We can start in India if you want.
India sounds great.
So let's see. I was in December, so a couple of months ago, or a little bit more than that, about half a year ago. I was in Mumbai, and I decided to visit a program that works with the children of prostitutes in the slums of the red light district, one of the largest red light districts in the world. And the first approach is like, what can the children of prostitutes teach us about creativity? And the first reaction is not much, but I am convinced that we can learn about creativity from anywhere. So I went there and I interviewed them, and these are the organization that works with them, Kranti, I think it's called. They take these kids from very, very bad circumstances, as you can imagine, and they're not going to school, and they're abused, and it's terrible. And they take them in. They have this small little house where they basically rescue them, and then they teach them, and they teach them a lot about creativity. They also show them TED Talks, which I find fascinating. And then these kids are smart, right? So and they teach them how to become more creative. And so I went there and had a discussion with these girls. These are 16, 17-year-old girls. And I said to them, okay, so what can I teach? What can I learn about creativity from you? And it took a while for them to kind of figure out what I wanted out of them. But after a while, one of them said, she said, I think you can learn about Sufferender. And I go, what? So Sufferender. So that's their approach, not only to creativity, but to almost anything. So what is Sufferender? It's just a made up word that she made up on the spot. But it's this idea that it's not about surrendering to the circumstances, but it's about, it's not about surrendering to your suffering, but it's surrendering to the fact that you are, it's accepting the fact that you are suffering and not letting that stop you. So she did a good analogy, like in the West, we have we would talk about a suffering artist, like, or a suffering actor who works as a waiter in New York, but who really wants to be an actor, right? And we talk about these people as suffering. And she's just looking at me, and these guys are not, you're not suffering. You have an apartment, you have a job, you have money, you are not suffering at all. And second of all, why are you telling yourself that you're suffering? Just because you want to be an actor and right now you're a waiter, by telling yourself that it's somehow you are unlucky, it's not going to make you an actor. So she said, why don't you just surrender to the fact that right now you're not an actor, but you are going to become an actor, and right now you are a waitress taking acting classes at night. So you see that totally different approach to life. It still doesn't mean, it still pushes you to become an actor, but you're not suffering while you're doing that.
I mean, yeah, that's a fascinating mindset about what it actually means to be able to enjoy your creative craft.
Yes, and so then they gave this beautiful example, because I forgot the name now, something like Via Camilla or something. You go to Spain and you do that walk for 80 days from France, southern France through Spain. It's one of those pilgrimage things that you're supposed to be doing. So this organization, they took all of these girls, like 20 of them, and they flew them there and said, we're going to do this walk. It's going to take 80 days, reflect on our lives, get you out of the slums. Beautiful project. But they don't have so much money. So when they arrived, they said to the girls, well, the tickets were quite expensive, and now we only have 300 euro for the whole group. So most likely we'll only be able to walk like 1 day or 2 days, and then we have to go home. And sorry. but then the girl said, okay, fine, but we're going to just enjoy these 2 days as much as possible, because otherwise, why should we go there and feel sorry about ourselves for 2 days and fly home? The trip is meaningless. So they said, let's have as much fun as we can and just sufferender to the fact that we don't have enough money, that it might not take us all the way, but at least try to get us as far as we can. And of course, they went all the way, because they would just walk up to people and say, hi, we're children from prostitutes. We're here to find a better life, but we don't have any money. Can you give us some food? And everyone just threw money at them and food at them. They made it the whole way. And they enjoyed the trip the whole way. And that's the key.
I mean, those mindset shifts, I think people sometimes don't appreciate how much the creative process relies on not this idea of suffering and struggling, because that's this romanticized view of what an artist should be like. Creativity can really be anywhere with any type of person.
Yeah, correct. And I think, of course, like with creativity, everything is, some people are creative when they're with a lot of other people. Some people are creative when they are by themselves. So there's never one. Some people need deadlines. Some people just freeze under deadline. So there's no one answer for how people should be creative. But we have this one thing of the suffering artist. It's like the only option that we've talked about. So I like to introduce this idea of the sufferender approach, which is just surrender to the process and enjoy it as much as you can, and then try to achieve your creative goals while you're enjoying the process of getting there. And I think that's much more interesting approach to the creative process that will fit much more people than the suffering one.
So that was a wonderful example. Have you got any other stories about interesting concepts or people that you've met on your journeys?
Yeah, so I have so many. We can take Thailand, for example. So I went to Thailand, and then of course I have to say that all of these examples are. I'm not saying that. So I'm writing a book, and the concept of the book is what can we learn about creativity from different countries and different cultures. Now, this doesn't mean that all the people in one country are behaving in one way. I do this analogy with food. So like we have Japanese food, and we have Thai food, and we have Italian food. And obviously not all Japanese people eat sushi all the time, but we can learn about sushi from Japan, right?
Of course.
So it's the same concept. So what can we learn about creativity from Thailand? Doesn't mean all Thai people think like this, but this is what I learned about creativity from Thailand. So I met this Thai paper artist, and she does beautiful art pieces in kind of like an origami, but she also cuts more of a cut. She's cutting the paper up and creates beautiful flowers. Absolutely wonderful. It's kind of similar to it's going to be a very positive example again, kind of similar to the one in India, but still different. So in Thailand, they have something called Sabai Sabai. Are you familiar with Sabai Sabai?
No, I'm not. Okay,
so this is when you go to Thailand. A lot of times, you will hear this. So for example, there's a long queue to check in to a hotel, and the Westerners get all upset, like, why there's a queue? And the Thai people will just say, Sabai Sabai, don't worry, relax, it's going to be fine. So that's what it means, like Sabai Sabai, don't worry. And that is their whole approach to a lot of. I mean, they're very happy people in Thailand. So. So we were talking about this concept of her sitting in her studio creating artwork, and then I said, okay, so what happens if you get stuck, like you don't have what do you do? What do you do if you get stuck? And she goes, I go out and have a cup of coffee. I said, oh, okay. So I said, what's in your head when you go out to have this cup of coffee? What's in your head? And she goes, what kind of coffee should I buy? I said, oh, okay, so nothing about the project. She goes, no, nothing about the project. I just leave the project. I go have a cup of coffee, and I just sit there and have my coffee. And then after 30 minutes, I go back and I continue on my project. And it's the same thing. Like a lot of Westerners, we talk about writer's block or that we get stuck. And it's the same. Oh, I'm frustrated. I can't. Or the white piece of paper. I don't know what to write. All these things, right? And she called it an idea nap, which I find it very beautiful. It's like a power nap, but for creativity. So whenever you're stuck, just stand up, go out, and don't think about the project. Just do something totally different, and then go back and continue on it. And you think about it, that's a classic example from David Ogilvy from Ogilvy Advertising. When he was stuck, he would just go up and go to the movies in the middle of the day because he just couldn't come up with a good idea for his ad. So just go up, take an idea nap, like a power nap for creativity, and come back and continue on your project.
I love that example as well, because it's actually something that's been proven by several research studies, that if you allow your mind to change topics without being too heavily focused on anything, then that gives it the space to incubate a bit more. And quite often afterwards is when the ideas come forward. And there's the scientific side to it that's trying to prove this. And then there's stories like you just told, where it comes from experience that people find the same outcome.
Yes, and you really feel that when you are in Thailand, don't worry, it will be fine.
So we've had 2 examples from Asia. How about we finish off with one example from somewhere else in the world?
Okay, how about Iceland?
That sounds good.
So I recently went to Iceland, and I wanted to say, what can we learn about creativity from Iceland? And Iceland is a fascinating country because they were never Christian. Like a lot of the Vikings, like Sweden and Norway, and then the monks came and we became Christians. But Iceland never. So I think it's something like, I don't remember the number, but something like 25% of the Icelandic people still believe in elves and invisible people. And there's a road in Iceland that goes to the airport. I think it's to the airport, and there was a stone where the invisible people live, and they built the road around that stone instead of moving the stone. So it's a crazy, crazy country. It's the country of Björk, and I love Iceland. But then I went to, and another cool thing with Iceland is that they have, the language is very similar to the language that they spoke like 1,000 years ago, the Vikings spoke. You can take an old Icelandic book, very old Icelandic book, and you can still read it, which is not true for English, for example. Try reading a 500-year-old English book, and it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing German and Swedish, but Icelandic, it's very similar. So they have a word in Icelandic, which is Heimskur. And Heimskur is like, so if you were a Viking and you lived on Iceland, you're supposed to you had a farm, you're supposed to build a ship. And then you got a bunch of other men on board, and then you would sail south, and you would sail to Scotland and Norway and Sweden or whatever, and then you were supposed to steal. And that was the whole idea. You go and plunder. So you steal whatever you could, like cows and gold or whatever. But most importantly, you were supposed to steal ideas. That was the purpose of the trip. You're supposed to steal ideas. How do they farm in Germany? How do they make swords in northern France and so on? And you go around and you pick up all these ideas, and then you go back to your farm and you implement those ideas on your farm. That was the idea. That was the purpose of the trip. If you didn't do that, you were a Heimskur. If you just stayed on your farm, you were a Heimskur. And a Heimskur means idiot, like moron. So someone who just stayed on his farm and never ventured out to pick up new ideas was a stupid person. That's a Heimskur. And I think that's a very good analogy for the mindset of a creative person, to never become a Heimskur.
Well, they sound like the original creativity explorers in that case.
Exactly, yes. I'm walking in the footsteps of the Vikings. Yes, absolutely.
Fredrik, it's been wonderful having you on here. If people want to find out more about you and your work, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
They can I guess they can Google the Creativity Explorer, or they can go to theworldofcreativity.com maybe, or just Fredrik Haren. There's only one Fredrik Haren in the world, so just Google that.
It's been wonderful having you on, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Me too, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they're backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.